Okie dokie, I believe we are all the way live. Hello and welcome to my graveyard. I am your host of the evening, the Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. Always taking names of cake and candy ass, live in little color here with you on Grande's Graveyard. And tonight we are here. We are in living color. We are, oh, yes, it is not 2020 anymore. No, this will be the inaugural, the first, the epic episode of Grande's Graveyard in the new year. Or should I say, the do year. Oh yeah, I'm punny like that, ladies and gents. Happy 2021, happy do year, everybody. I hope everybody had an awesome, safe New Year's holiday. I had a wonderful birthday right before it, and I decided, I'm going to take the next week off, enjoy a little break that I had. I had like 2 days of work over 11 days. So it was basically like a mini vacation with those 2 days of work, like right in the middle of it. But I had an excellent holiday, man. It was a really, really good time. Cleared my head, caught up on some sleep, picked up some awesome horror Blu-rays and stuff like that. That even one of them I'll be covering on the show tonight. One of the newer Blu-rays, horror Blu-rays I picked up. And I don't know, I had a wonderful time. It was a really wonderful holiday. We already have somebody in the house. Aiden Vavre's in it. I know he's a diehard Argento guy, just like me. So I'm glad you're in the house tonight. What's up, dude? I'm hoping so. I'm hoping this will be badass. I'll tell you, it was a really fun time prepping for this show because Argento is just one of my all-time faves, man. And Ty Junebug Films is in the house. What's going on, good brother? I saw that you're going to be taking a break from YouTube for a little bit. That was a bummer, man. I'm sorry to hear that, but I hope all is well with you, and uh, we hope to have you back on here sooner rather than later, brother, because your content's awesome. And you know, I was enjoying the holiday, man. I got some awesome stuff in. Been catching up on some anime, some Giallo. I actually watched Argento's Sleepless, and that was a couple days before its 20th anniversary, and I had no goddamn idea. I should have watched it on the 20th anniversary. I thought that would have been awesome. I believe it was on the 4th. Was it the 4th that it was its 20th? I believe so. The 4th, it turned 20 years old, and that's a really, really good movie. It was cool to revisit it. I believe Scorpion is the company that put that out. It looked incredible on Blu-ray, man. The transfer was incredible. That train sequence at the beginning, it was just like, I was like, wow, man. Like, this is fucking incredible stuff, man. Especially to see that in high def was really cool because I know for a long time the DVD was out of print. So that was a cool one to go back and revisit, especially around its 20th birthday. I thought that was a really, really cool kind of thing. It's just coincidental, but pretty cool nevertheless. But yeah, so I'm here tonight, and what's crazy enough is over a year ago is when I did my first Dario Argento episode. I did the Three Mothers trilogy, of course, Suspiria, Inferno, and The Mother of Tears, which I still think is one of the most underrated horror movies of all time. And it was almost a year ago to the day. I believe it was January 9th of 2020 where I did that trilogy. And then I was thinking, oh, what would be a good show to start off the new year? I was like, wow, it's almost a year to the day that I did the first Argento episode. Why not do the second Argento episode? And hopefully, I won't wait this long in between episodes, Argento episodes again. I'd like to talk more, especially because I just saw Sleepless. I'd like to do one where I do like opera, trauma, and Stenhole syndrome. I think that would be a fun three to do. And then one of them, I could do the three animal trilogy, of course, the bird with the crystal plumage, Cat o' Nine Tails, and Four Flies on Gray Velvet. I think that would be a fun episode to do as well. So there's tons and tons of Argento possibilities down the road, but I'm really, really extra excited about the ones I'm going to talk about here tonight. Got a couple comments. I'm taking a break from YouTube because of the current situation in the U.S., but I'm not going to get into that. Yeah, no, I'm not political either, man. It's a shame, man. That's why we're here to forget about all that stuff and talk Dario Argento and Giallos and Phenomena and Jennifer Connelly and all this good stuff we're going to talk about tonight. Sleepless is a fun film. The Goblin score was wonderful. Yeah, it really was. And I think it's so cool that all the years later they came back for that film and worked on that film for him, and it gives that film a unique sense of style. And I will say that even though it's not as good as some of the other Goblin scores from yesteryear of the 70s and 80s, I will say that it really does make that movie feel not 2001. That's the thing with that movie that I realized going back and rewatching it, even in high def, which makes it look even better, it doesn't feel like a 2001 Giallo movie. And I think Max von Sydow gives a great performance in it. May he rest in peace. I don't know. There's something about that movie. He made it feel very retro. and that's why I love Sleepless. I think Sleepless is super underrated. I know I used to consider it one of his lower movies, but I would definitely say it's moved up the ladder since I've last watched it. And I definitely down the road will do an episode discussing that one, so that'll be a fun time. AJ Zitro's in the hazy. What's going on, my friend, dude? Congrats to your Chicago Bears. They are playoff bound, man. I'm gonna be super excited watching this weekend. It's gonna be a fun weekend watching football, man. I'm super stoked, jacked up. It'll be a good time. Go Steelers, and for AJ, go Bears. Duh, Bears, go Bears. I have a little money on the Steelers. Just gonna throw that out there. So big fan, even more so of a fan of my favorite team. So it's gonna be a fun ass weekend. But I guess we can jump right in. We're talking three Argento classics tonight, and it was so fun revisiting all three of these throughout the week. First up, we've got Deep Red. Then is Tenebre. And finally, last but certainly not least, so also, this is probably one of my favorite movies of all time, especially when I went back and rewatched it. Dario Argento's Phenomena. So we got three awesome Argento masterpieces. We can go in chronological order with these, and I will review them, talk about them, likes, dislikes, all that good stuff. We can jump right in with a little plot synopsis. I got it up here on IMDb. All right, so a jazz pianist and a wisecracking journalist are pulled into a complex web of mystery after the former witnesses the murder. Oh my god, I botched this, okay? I botched this I botched it. Into the complex web of mystery after the former witnesses the brutal murder of a psychic. I'm sorry, ladies and gents. I did not this is the danger of doing a live show. Sometimes you just become a marble mouth like Scott Steiner and just completely mess up your promo. But that was a poor introduction, but I do love this movie. It's one of my all-time favorites and possibly the greatest Giallo film ever made. It is from 1975. It is Dario Argento's Deep Red, aka Profondo Rosso. You will never forget it. Yes, I love that little tagline. They used to also have on the theatrical poster, it's like, you've experienced The Exorcist, you've experienced Jaws, you've experienced Psycho. Now there is Deep Red. I always love when movie posters like go for it like that. Like, yeah, we're putting our name right on the same poster with all these other classic movies. Super big fan of that. I love, especially when it lives up to it too, because sometimes you could be oh so bold and then the movie shits the bed and it's nothing like those. But Deep Red ain't one of those movies. Deep Red is one of those movies that lives up to all those other movies, and I might like it even better than all those movies, man. It's right in that conversation because in my humble opinion, this is the greatest Giallo film of all time. I rewatched these, man, and I just got to say, I rewatched this last night actually, and it was just sensational, man. I got to say, first of all, got to shout out Arrow for this 4K transfer. It is absolutely incredible looking. I used to have the Blue Underground Blu-ray, and whereas I do think that's a great Blu-ray too, I think this one is just even better, man. It's just spectacular. It's much more bright and vibrant. Like there are certain scenes like the red curtain scene with the psychic, and there's a murderer in here, a killer. And I know you're going to kill again. The psychic lady trying to pick somebody out from the audience. Just epic stuff, man. I always loved that scene. And it's super bright in this version. And it's just, I don't know. This is a great Blu-ray. I love Arrow. Anything Arrow does, their special editions, their restorations, transfers. It's just top notch, man. It's off the fucking charts, to be honest with you. But getting a little into this one, I first saw this years and years ago after I had seen Suspiria, and I thought, wow, how do you top Suspiria? And I watched this, and I remember when it ended, I was like, huh, that Deep Red movie, it's right up there with Suspiria. To me, it's Suspiria and this are one and two. I really put them very, very close to one another. And I think they're excellent, excellent movies, especially to watch back to back. And they were made back to back, of course, this being first, Suspiria being the latter. And this came at a very interesting time in Argento's career where he had made just the Three Animals trilogy. And then he tried to make a comedy called 5 Days in Milan, I believe. And it was a super flop, unfortunately for him. And he was like, damn, like I went to the well. I tried to venture out of these Giallo films that I had made so popular. And this was him returning to the well. And I appreciate that he didn't really want to just do the same exact thing as those three movies. This movie, I think, is so much more grander and especially for any Giallo film, because this is a movie that I think it's a Giallo film that it breathes. It has a lot of time to build its characters. It has a lot of time to build themes. These things aren't found in most Giallo films. Like there are a lot of Giallo films I really like. I really like, Torso, that was done by Sergio Martino. I'm a big fan of Blood and Black Lace, which is Mario Bava. But I will say that those films, while I love them, they're shorter. This movie, it's over 2 hours when you watch. I know there's some cuts where it's the US cuts like 20 minutes shorter. This one of those movies, it really gives itself time to establish tension, to establish good character development, to establish some of the awesome themes that are going on in this movie that completely go over my head the first time I watched it. But watching it last night, I was like, oh man, I clicked on a lot of more cylinders when I was watching this, and I was blown away. I thought, wow, like this is a really deep film. Deep Red, ironically the title. But yeah, I'm a super fan of this. I do want to say, first of all, David Hemmings, he does a great job as the lead. He's one of my favorite Dario Argento lead protagonists in a film. And he's sidekicked by the late great, may she rest in peace, Daria Nicolodi, who passed away just a few months ago. Also, I would like to dedicate this episode in her memory, because Daria Nicolodi, and a lot of people don't really, I don't think, give her credit, and Dario Argento included in that. I think she was a really big part of his success. And I watched the interview on here with her talking about this film and talking about Dario and working with him on all the films she worked. I believe they worked on 6 films together. And just hearing some of the stuff she had to say, I thought was really interesting, because she said, think about it. He made a span of like 10 movies or so that just were absolutely incredible. From this film all the way to Opera, I would consider to be Argento's prime. That was his best years of making movies. Coincidentally, he was with or married to Daria Nicolodi from 75 to 85. It was a 10-year stretch where she and him were together. And she made a good point saying that while she was with him, he was happy, he was in love, and he loved doing what he wanted to do, and that's make film. And I thought that was just so interesting, man. Like maybe, just maybe, Daria Nicolodi was the secret to his success over those years. And I know she's the one that turned him on to the Three Mothers lore that's used in Suspiria. And she actually gets the co-writing credit, even though Argento was not a fan of that. He did not want her to get a co-writing credit, but it was her idea to do that film. And then he kind of read into it and said, hey, maybe I could do something with this. And together, Suspiria is born. And I think that's the most interesting thing about the whole thing. Like without her, I don't know if we get Suspiria as we know it today. And I think she does a wonderful job in this. It's easily my favorite character she plays in any of Argento's films. She's like this wisecracking, kind of feisty reporter, and her and David Hemming have wonderful fucking chemistry. They're always arguing about like silly stuff, and men are more masculine than women. Women are weak, and all this. And she's like, all right, you want to put your money where your mouth is? Tell me I'm weak. She puts her arm on the table. She's like, arm wrestle me right here and now. And they have this kind of funny banter, do this arm wrestling match, and Daria Nicolodi wins. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm really delicate, huh? Like it's fantastically done, man. I really like their kind of playing off each other, because it's fun, it's playful, it's flirty, and I think it really worked well. I loved their chemistry in the film. And again, when you're talking about a Giallo film, that's not something you would think. Oh, a love story, a good character interactions, funny moments, actual relief from what's going on. Yes, Deep Red has that. And a lot of Giallo films do not have that. And that's why I really like this film. Unfortunately, the US theatrical cut, it cuts out almost all of that friendly banter, in similar vein to what Argento did with Dawn of the Dead. He cut out a lot of the humor. This film, the same thing in the United States. They cut out a lot of the Daria Nicolodi, David Hemmings interactions. And I think that really would hurt the film, because it adds so much to it on the full uncut release. We got a bunch of comments here. This is from the year I was born. Don't be a smartass. Wow, 1975. That's bonkers, man. That is crazy. I do love the films that came out that year, though, good brother. I always thought Dario Argento should have corrected a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Should have directed a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. That would have been interesting, because especially when we get into this film, some of the dream sequences All right, I'm back. I don't know what the fuck happened. Sorry. I don't know if y'all can see me now or hear me. I hope so. And is my mic okay? I'm gonna just double check my mic just to make sure I'm not like breaking anybody's ears. Okay, I think we should be good. I think I'm back. I don't know. I don't know how many people are here watching me. But yes, I agree, Ty. I don't know where I got cut off there. What's Argento's worst movie? Dracula? Definitely. Yeah, that's his worst movie, without a doubt. Deep Red was my introduction to Argento. What a great Giallo. My jaw dropped. From then on, I became an Argento fan. Dude, that's an awesome way to kick off with the Maestro, man. Don Belleville. Oh, my good brother Don Nice. How are you, good brother? Yes, sir. This is the Arrow release. This is not the big box Arrow release. This is just the standard. I believe the big box release goes for stupid money now, like $200. No thanks. I'm not made of money here. Yes, totally agree. Oh dear. Yep. I've okay. Great. Good. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what the fuck happened. Sometimes my internet just decides to crap out randomly. But we're back in the flesh, baby. But see, I could run through this film, man, because there are certain scenes in this that just blow me away. And right off the bat, it's the opening title credits and the score by Goblin. Just absolutely iconic. Boom, 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 ba-da-da-da. Just great stuff. It just instantly, as soon as the credits roll, gets you into the mood. And then we cut away from the credits in halfway through the credits, and we see this silhouette of a Christmas tree and a shadow and a scream and this little slow nursery like lullaby children's song. La 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 la. Fucking creepy as fuck, man. All right, Claudia Simonetti, you are a crazy son of a bitch, and I love you. You hear that? You hear a scream, a murder, knife drops, and then we get this classic, like almost Hitchcockian shot of this bloody knife at the feet of what we presume to be a child. And then bam, cuts right back to the score and the credits, Regia Dario Argento, directed by Dario Argento. Awesome stuff, man. That's how you start a film, because right off the bat, bam, badass score, crazy, what have you, murder, silhouette, just absolutely insanity. And then bam, back to the credits, and we are just nosedived right into this thing. And we know that that's going to play a fact later on. Even the first time you watch this, you go, all right, because if you've seen enough Giallo films, you're like, okay, that's going to play a factor somewhere in here later. I can make a check of that. And that's what I think was so cool about that, is like, bam, it's terrifying. They established two different parts of the score, and they both are just absolutely badass. And then we get into this one, and we follow David Hemmings, and he witnesses a murder. He's this musician. He witnesses a murder, and basically he arrives at the scene and he feels deep down inside that he noticed something at the scene of the crime that may solve the crime and who the killer is. And I love how this movie is shot, man. There's some really good scenes where he's talking to his good buddy who's playing the piano at a local bar, and you see these two talking outside the bar, and it's almost like the painting from Nighthawks. I don't know if people know that painting, Nighthawks painting. It's all the people sitting in the bar, and it's that kind of wide shot of all these people, drinking coffee and what have you on the Park Street. In this film, it's called The Blue Bar, and it's literally Nighthawks, the painting Nighthawks, which again, Daria Nicolodi had taken Dario Argento to to a art museum, and he saw the painting there and was like, oh man, I would love to put that in one of my movies. And then bam, you get it in this film. You get a lot of cool interaction with David Hemmings and this other character, and they're talking about the dangers of believing things that you don't see, and convincing yourself that something you may have not seen may just in fact be the truth. I love those themes in here. And this other character also, he is a drunk, he is a gay character, and we learn a lot about him in this kind of exposition scene where he walks in on this guy and his lover, and he looks ashamed about it. He's like, look at me, man, I'm still living with my mother, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm gay. He's like, I mean, this is a rough time to be alive. And I think that it's nice to have that character have depth in there, because once again, I sound like a broken record, but that's not in many Giallo films. It's really good. I think it adds a lot of, potatoes to the meat. And that's when David Hemmings, he sees this murder. He meets up with Daria Nicolodi, and then the two of them, he's kind of shooing her away a lot, but the two of them decide they have to join forces and figure out who the killer is. And we get a bunch of clues along the way. And every time he gets a clue, it leads to someone being killed off. And some of the kills in this movie are just absolutely epic. My favorite one is, of course, it features the little puppet doll. He's this professor, this guy. He finds a really big clue, and he's drinking some scotch in his little room, and he hears the little song that we hear at the beginning of the film. La 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 la. Fucking scary, man. And you hear it faintly, almost like in Suspiria, how that score is used faintly at times. You can hear it, so you know shit's about to hit the fan. He hears that, and then he looks towards the closet. The film score breaks, and you see this kind of like little creepy little doll just run, sprint at him, and he's terrified, whacks it with a cleaver, and he's like, what the hell? And the arms are still moving. Just one of the creepiest visuals ever in any film. And then bam, he gets killed. He gets his face smashed into the wall and smashed into the counter. It's a really brutal death scene. And I remember the first time I saw that, being like, holy shit, like this creepy little doll just running out of the goddamn closet. And is it monumental? Is it something that really has to be in the film? No, but it's a really good example of how Argento builds great tension. Here's a guy, he just found a big clue. He's taking a drink, celebrating the whole thing. Faintly hear that score that we heard at the beginning, and then we know that something bad's going to go down. We just don't know what. And that doll is almost like a false sense of what's going to happen, and then we get the payoff. I thought that was really, really well directed by Argento. I love that scene. Thought it was just absolutely brilliant. And I think that there are a lot of things in this movie too that I like, is where he uses Goblin's score. There's a scene where he's looking in this old house, and he sees in the cracks, it looks like a painting or drawing, and he's cracking it, trying to break it, and they kind of play the lower part of the score, and then as he reveals more, it intensifies. The score gets quicker, better, and badder. And I just think that was really, really smart thing to do. And you see this kid standing over the body going, oh my god, could this be something? Just really well done. I like how he plants the seeds in this one. It's a fun mystery. And I think that's the key to a lot of great Giallo films, is a lot of them are mysteries. They're murder mysteries with a lot of gore, and this one does not shy away from it. But I think the reason that this is one of the greatest, and in my opinion, the greatest Giallo, is because it's so grand. You have great acting. You have really good character development, which you don't get in a lot. You get the great Goblin score. You get a lot of time for this movie to build its craziness, man, and its tension. And it really all pays off exactly at the points where he wants it to pay off. And I think the mystery in itself is really interesting. The first time I saw it, I did not know who the killer was going to be. I was kind of shocked at the end. And we can get into spoilers with that. I can get into that a little bit. So, spoiler alerts ahead if you've not seen Deep Red. I thought the killer in this movie, like, I never saw that shit coming. Basically, you learn that it's the drunk guy that he's been talking to. I can't think of the fucking actor's name. I said I would remember it here, but I'll look it up. Give me 1 second. I believe I forgot his name. He's also in Sleepless. It's Gabriel Labia as Carlo. He also went on to be in Argento's Sleepless. He's a really, really good actor. You think for a moment that he's the killer. And there's a point where he and David Hemmings, they come across each other after this really heartfelt moment where Daria Nicolodi ends up getting stabbed. And he finds Daria Nicolodi. He's like, oh my gosh. And he looks up and he sees Gabriel Lavia's character. And they're just both like looking at each other. And he's like, I told you to stay away. I told you what you saw was the wrong thing, and that you were just telling yourself it was the truth. And you get this really, really heartfelt moment between the two of them. And I love Gabriel Lavia's performance is fantastic as he's crying, and you could tell that there maybe is just a little bit something more to what he's telling us. He runs out, he escapes police shooting at him, and we thinking, oh my God, did the killer just escape? Is he in the clear? Wrongo. He gets fucking taken away somehow by this like garbage truck. He gets his leg hooked, and they're driving around the streets with him. Bam, just smacks his head into the pavement. One of the craziest fucking practical effects you'll ever see. It's just this crazy, it's almost like a Final Destination death scene. bam, he hits his head against the concrete, and the car's driving away. They finally realize that the guy's hooked to the back of their car. They stop. He turns around, bam, gets his head run over like a melon. Fucking wild, man. I remember when I first saw it, I was like, holy shit, man. Like, that is an absolutely crazy way for your killer to get killed. And then I'm just like, oh, wow, is that the end of the film? That was pretty clever, pretty interesting little flick. That's not it. And what I think was brilliant about it was Argento's telling us, oh, that this guy's the killer, this guy's the killer. He's not the killer. David Hemmings, he walks away, hears that Daria Nicolodi is going to be okay. And he walks away from the hospital and he's like, wait a minute. That night that I witnessed the psychic murder, he was with me. We were talking just before it happened. So he knows that Gabriel Labia was not the killer. In fact, it ends up being an actress that's in barely any time of the film, maybe 2 scenes before this. It's Gabriel Labia's mother. And you get 2 scenes with her, and I tried to watch extra closely this time to see if they give any hints, and they really do in both scenes. The first time she says, oh, I used to be an actress, but my husband, he made me give it up. And that's right there the motive for what we see at the opening. He made her give up her profession, thus causing her to go a little nutty. And that's where we get the opening scene where she just finally fucking snaps. I want to be an actress, bitch. She comes out with a fucking knife right in front of her son on Christmas Eve, I think, right in front of the Christmas tree. Bam, gets stabbed right in the fucking spine. And the guy crumbles to the ground. And the kid's like, oh shit, my fucking dad just got killed in front of me. Like, that's fucking dark, all right? Like, that is absolutely fucking insane, man. I think, like, to have that kid even stand there, that must be fucking traumatic for a child. And, man, it is a memorable scene. And, like, I always loved that that's kind of the little bit of background we get. We got a piece of that, and then it comes full circle by the end. And we realize that the mother has been doing the killings all this time, and her son, out of his loyalty and love for her, tried to cover it up. He tried to say, hey, the egg's on my face. I did it. I don't want her to be harmed. And then when the mother confronts David Hemmings, it's the same exact dynamic. I loved my son. He wouldn't have harmed a fly. And here you are. You caused his death. You're the reason that my son's gone now, and I'm going to kill you. And you get this great kind of final battle between killer and protagonist. As she's swinging the meat cleaver at him through the paintings, he's like, oh shit. He goes back to the elevator and she gets her necklace caught on the elevator and she can't pull out. And then bam, he just kind of hits the button and you just see the fucking entire necklace just go right through her neck. All practical, kind of light, bright red gore, similar to the gore that they had in Romero's Dawn of the Dead. You just have all this gore drip down, and then David Hemming kind of just looks in the reflection of the gore as the end credits roll. Just an epic fucking way to end your film, because I think what gets lost on a lot of people is the heart there. There's a lot of heart to that. Here's this kid who knew his mother was damaged, and he was damaged as a result of what happens in our opening scene, right? His dad was killed in front of him. He is a chronic alcoholic. He suffers from depression. He is a homosexual. And all of these things he beats himself up over, his imperfections. And at the end of the day, in his heart of hearts, deep down inside, he is a great person. He wants to find happiness, but it's through trying to correct his mother's sins that ultimately leads to his demise. And I think that that's just so brilliant. And I think that's something that you don't see in a lot of Giallo films. I know I've said that about 7 times, but it really isn't. I mean, you don't get stuff that deep in movies like this. And that's why I really appreciate that Argento was able to go there. And, not to mention all the beauty in this movie, right? Like, so many great visuals and uses of the camera. There's some great scenes where they don't do the POV like in Black Christmas or Halloween. They do more of a low, steady shot of what the killer sees, but it's not a POV exactly. Like, they'll play the score and you'll see some yarn and you'll see this doll, and it's what the killer is looking at, finding the clues after David Hemmings does, just so the killer can be one step ahead of him, ahead of her, when he thinks that he's one step ahead. really good psychology there. I think that was really clever because every time you think, oh, okay, David Hemmings, he's one step ahead, he's going to figure this out now. Bam, the lead or the clue, whatever, gets kiboshed by the killer. Thought that was really cool, and just some of the gorgeous shots of this movie and vibrant colors and stuff like that. It's not like Suspiria with its usage of lighting and color, but this movie, in a lot of ways, it's almost like Kubrick's Barry Lyndon. It's like watching a live painting come to life. And a lot of that's because of Argento, man, and how well he shoots this. There's a great scene of Hemmings and Gabriel Labia, and they're talking, and it's a really long wide shot, and they're yelling at each other. And this is about the murder and what I have seen versus what I think I saw and all this stuff, that kind of thing. And it's amazing fucking visual. It literally looks like a fucking painting come to life. And there's a lot of that in this movie. It really is. I mean, there's the one scene where he finds out that this woman that wrote this book might be involved, and she walks back into her house after saying goodbye to the cleaning lady, and she just sees this doll hung from the ceiling, and she's just like this. And once again, faintly, you hear that la 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 la, and you're like, oh no, now she's gonna die, man. Just I love the visuals in this, man, because they're so goddamn haunting and creepy. And that's the thing I love about Deep Red the most. It's very effective with its scares. It's very effective with tackling its themes and letting its film breathe. It's one of those movies that it's not rushed at all. It really is able to breathe and cover everything it wants to do in due time. I've heard people say the 2 hour cut is boring. I don't agree with that. I think that's what makes this stand out. It's because it's longer. It gives itself a little bit more time to establish itself on its own two legs. And that's why I love Deep Red, man. I think it's a little bit longer, a little bit, more pretty, if you will, and it's a little bit better. It just really is. It is a cut above the rest, no pun intended, and that's really one of the big reasons I love it. We got a bunch of comments here. That's all made me jump out of my seat, and the murder scene happens, which is brutal. Argento knows how to film brutal murders, dude, for real, man, and he knows how to make it. And especially with this movie, he knows how to make murder scenes beautiful. And that's again why I love Argento. It's the most morbid thing in the world. It's death. And somehow he makes it look like an artistic painting. It's so incredible what he's able to do, man. But it's not lost on anybody. I think that's the beauty of Dario Argento is everybody realizes that he may not have been a big narrative guy, a plot guy, but at the end of the day, he really knew how to make his movies stand out in other ways, and that's not easy to do, man. But Argento nailed it. Yeah, Gabriel Labia is a great Argento regular. I love his performance in Deep Red, and his appearance in Inferno was great. Funny story about that, Aiden. He, believe it or not, was not cast in Inferno when they first started filming. He was walking home from fucking some other audition or something, and he saw that the people were filming a movie, and it ended up being Argento filming Inferno. And he was like, "Oh, hey, what's going on, Dario?" And he was like, "What the fuck?" He was like, "Gabriel." He was like, "Do you want to be in a murder scene? We'll kill you really quick." And he was like, "Sure." And they filmed it right then and there that very day. I don't even know if he paid the fucking guy, but that's just something you don't get anymore, man. That kind of homemade feeling, that homemade thing to this whole filmmaking process. I love that story. I think that's so fucking wild. Like, hey man, you want to go over here? We'll cover you in gore. Sure, you're in the movie. Go ahead. Like it's just fucking crazy, man. I love that, man. Gabriel Labia in this film in particular, I thought he gave a wonderful performance. He almost steals the film. Although I will say, I think Daria Nicolodi steals this fucking film. I'd like to talk a little bit about her character, but we got more comments here. Argento or Hitchcock? Argento. I know a lot of people will tell you, oh, Argento is a big ripoff of Hitchcock. I don't agree with that. I do think in a lot of ways, Hitchcock was able to make very beautiful films. Like To Catch a Thief is a really beautiful film in the vein of like a Bava or Argento. It has that look to it. And just maybe he inspired Argento and Bava a lot. But I will say personally, and this is just a personal thing, my type of movie that I love is more of like Argento style. I like more gore than you're ever going to get in a Hitchcock film. I like horror more than I like thriller. And I know some people will say this is a thriller. I disagree. I think this is a horror film. I think most Giallos are horror films. The tame Giallos, those are more thrillers, I would say. But this is, to me, I don't know. I think Argento is very much more R-rated, and I like that personally. When it comes to technically, I know that's probably what you mean by the question. It's tough, man. I guess technically people would say Hitchcock for the time, but I think Argento, I mean, when you think about it, he really revolutionized the Giallo film with this, like because Giallos were on their way out at this point. I mean, he had made The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and that was a big hit, but Giallo movies were slowly but surely fading. I mean, they were the mid 60s, early 70s, and by this point had almost faded out completely until this came out, and it really set the world on fire because he was able to add so much more to it. This isn't just a 90-minute equivalent to a slasher movie or equivalent to just, bang, bang, boom, we're out of the theater. It's so much more. And I think that's why I love Dario Argento. And I think that a lot of the themes he talks about in a lot of his films, this one, I'll get to it in a little bit. Some of the themes he tackles and being so bold to go off and try a witch film in Suspiria and Inferno and stuff like that, and reinventing Giallo over and over and over again with films like Opera and films like Sleepless, and doing different things with the same formula. I think that's what makes him a genius, because I think in a lot of ways Hitchcock did that too. I think he did a lot of films that were very similar, but he was able to shake them up and make them all work on their own 2 feet. I think they're very similar, but personally, Argento for me. Wonderful ending. Long live Deep Red. Absolutely, man. I love that film. Nigor's in the Heezy. What's up, my friend? Well, it's the big show. Good brother. I'm glad you're in the Heezy. Yeah, it is a crazy story. It's absolutely insane. Argento or Fulci? Wow, that's tough. Because now the flip reverse of this is I can't really say the same thing I just said with Argento Hitchcock, because Fulci does make the type of movie I like. He does make the gore and the beauty. And I will say that, people always talk about the House by the Cemetery and The Beyond and City of Living Dead, the trilogy. And I love those movies. Those are probably, House by the Cemetery is probably my favorite. And I know that people love The Beyond. I mean, The Beyond is over like Rover and Zombie. We did an episode on it together. I will say that I think some of Fulci's earlier works, they really get lost on people. Like, nobody ever mentions The Sidekick. Nobody ever really mentions Don't Torture a Duckling. I think those are some of his best films when it comes to regarding some of the themes that Argento tackled. And I think Don't Torture a Duckling is the most. It's the film that I could watch from Fulci that feels most Argento in a lot of ways. It really, when it comes to that scene where the woman, she's wrongly accused of the murder of that child, and the town villagers, they come to kill her, and they play that slow, beautiful Italian music as she's crying and she knows that her life's about to end. Again, Fulci makes it look so beautiful, but that music, it's so heartbreaking, and it really tears you as the viewer. I think Lucio Fulci is one of the greats, man, and I think he's really underrated. I know a lot of people, they just discuss, the early '80s and then until his death of the early '90s. Cat in the Brain, and I love those movies too. New York Ripper, I love that movie too. I just think like a lot of his earlier works get lost on a lot of horror fans. So if we're coming full circle here, it's tough. Personally, I'd go Argento, but you got a hell of a case for Fulci, man. I think Lucio Fulci's a fucking legend. I still need to watch the documentary, Fake for Fulci, or something like that. I know they got his daughter to do interview and talk about him and stuff. I would love to watch that, man. I've definitely got to get that. I have a $5 gift card to Severin, which will probably only cover the shipping, but I got to check that out because I'm a big Fulci guy too. But personally, I would lean Dario, but I love Lucio Fulci. That one's even closer to me than Argento Hitchcock. Beatrix Sensi is worth watching by Fulci. You already know how I feel about it. Yeah, yeah, no, dude, I'm a big, yeah, that's my favorite scene too. I think it's the best scene in the film. Argento's a big fan of Fulci. He produced the Wax Mask for him, but he sadly passed away before he made it. Wax Mask is a really good film. Highly recommend it. I've not seen the Wax Mask. I know that you actually are a big Big fan of that one. I definitely I got to give it a whirl because I've never seen the Wax Mask, but I've heard a lot of good things. And hearing all those names together, working together, it's just absolutely. I'm like, damn, like I got to check that out. Like Baba and Argento, and with Shock, and then of course Baba directed Second Unit. The last film he ever worked on was Inferno. Pretty interesting stuff. But before I move on from Deep Red, I just want to say one last thing about Daria Nicolodi. I really do. Upon rewatching this, I felt she really stole this movie, and she had a wonderful charm to her character. I really liked how playful she was with David Hemmings, and when the moments had to get serious, I thought she really did well with the dramatic parts too. There's a scene where David Hemming gets knocked out and he's left to die in this burning building, and she gets him out of there. And there's this great close-up shot of the fire and her, and she doesn't like do any of the "I told you so" stuff or anything like she was playing before. She just says like, "Listen, like I know you may not want my help. I know you may think women are weak or whatever, but I want to help you. I think together we can work this out. And I think together we can stop who's doing this." And it's a really nice, heartfelt moment between the two of them. And I don't know. I think Dario Nicolodi provided a wonderful heart to this movie that is missing from so many other films like this. I think that Daria Nicolodi's performance in this, it's probably my favorite performance of her in any Argento film. And she does a wonderful job. I know she's in Tenebre, but I love her in Phenomena. We'll get there. We'll get there because she is fucking absolutely batshit in that one. But yeah. So I watched this and I watched the Daria Nicolodi interview, and I just it tore at my heart. I was like, rest in peace, Daria Nicolodi, because I think she does a wonderful performance and gave a great heart to this movie. Um, I will come in at the perfect score. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. I think this is a perfect film. I think it's the second greatest Argento film. It's right behind Suspiria. But it's one of those movies, like I said before, a year ago. Every time I watch it, I'm like, damn, that Deep Red movie. It's right up there. It is right up there. And as are these two. I mean, I love these two too. But 10 out of 10 for me. An absolute, the greatest Giallo film of all time. I can't say enough good things about Deep Red. Um, so in Argento's career, Deep Red was a big hit, and people were like, "Oh man, what are you going to do next? Are you going to do another Giallo film? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to spice things up?" And that's when Argento said, "I got to get out of making Giallo films. I want to make something completely different." Thus, he makes Suspiria, set the world on fire with that. Then he comes out with Inferno, and that got a little bit of a less popular critical rating, and with the modern going audiences. So he was pretty much challenged. They were saying, "Hey, can you return back to form? Can you go back to do what you used to do?" And that was make Giallo films. And Argento's response was none other than 1982's Tenebre. Yes, aka translates to The Darkness. I love this. I think this is a fucking masterpiece too. And I think that again, this is one of the better Giallo films out there. And it is one of, if not the highest rated movie on the entire Video Nasties list, which I thought was really interesting because it's funny, like this does not fit in with the Video Nasties at all. Neither does Inferno, yet they're both on the list, which I think is weird. But I think this is just a fantastic film too. I can read the plot synopsis. I promise I'll try not to butcher it this time. An American writer in Rome is stalked by a serial killer bent on harassing him while killing all people associated with his work on his latest book, Tenebre. Yes, yes, this is Tenebre. I absolutely love this movie. I loved it ever since the first time I saw it. I don't know if Don's still in the chat, but my good buddy Don Nice, who I used to do the Flashback Horror Movie podcast with, and I had on for the Black Christmas episode, he recommended years and years ago I see this movie. This was one of the few Argento films that had eluded me. He was like, "Dude, you got to see fucking Tenebre. It's a great film." So I was like, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to blind buy, pick this up, picked up the Synapse Blu-ray. It looks incredible, by the way. Synapse does a great job with their transfers. And for the next hour and 41 minutes or whatever, I was just absolutely blown away by this. I thought this was a brilliant little Giallo film in its own right. It basically stars, oh God, what's his name? Anthony Franciosa. I don't know if I pronounced that incorrectly. He plays this writer, and he's, on this traveling book tour promoting his book, The Darkness. And slowly but surely, there's all these murders happening around him. There's the lovely, the voluptuous Ania Pieroni, who shows up in so many Italian horror films around this time. She was like Italy's scream queen for me, just because I think, number one, she's one of those beautiful women of all time. Number two, without a doubt, she has the most beautiful eyes of all time. She was also in Inferno as the Mother of Tears, which I always thought was funny. And she was asked to reprise the role all those years later, 27 years later. Argento actually picked up the phone and called somebody who had done a bit role 27 years earlier and said, "Hey, I want you back." And she declined because of her age, but she respectfully declined. She was flattered that he even thought to call her. She's also in House by the Cemetery as the weird nanny. And yes, with the crazy, like the mannequin eyes and shit, and she gets decapitated. I absolutely love Ennio Pieroni. She's in a ton of these movies around this time, from like 78 to like 82, 83 era. She's in all of these movies, and she's in this one as one of the opening victims. She steals the book from a store and she gets caught, and then she's walking back to her house. And this felt very Fulci to me. It's funny enough we brought up Fulci. She gets stalked by this kind of old pervert man, and she runs back to her apartment and she thinks she's escaped him. Again, building tension on something that we're not going to execute with him, we're going to execute elsewhere. This is one of the great things that Argento does. He sets you up with one domino, but the other one falls. I thought that was really cool, where she's weirded out by this old pervert man, turns around, and the killer himself is in the apartment with her. And bam, stab to the gut, and he takes pages of the book and is shoving it in her face, down her throat. It's a really brutal, like, opening kill, man. It's so, you're like, oh my gosh, like, I just pop out of your head. And again, Argento really dwells on those beautiful eyes of Ennio Pieroni. And then we meet our lead character, the author who's written this book, Tenebre. And right off the bat, he's kind of accused somewhat, but he's like, listen, I'm just here to promote my book. Like, this is crazy. I can't believe all this shit's going on. And we get more and more murders and stuff like that. And first thing that really like jumps out to me is the look of this film as opposed to most of Argento's films before this. He's coming off Inferno. He's coming off Suspiria. And believe it or not, I believe this was the only other time he worked with the same director of photography that did Suspiria. Again, this was the only other time they worked together. And if you notice, this film has a very much like a blue neon like look to it. It's funny because for a film called that translates to The Darkness, it's anything but that. It's very bright, like blue neon colors, almost like Miami Vice colors, if you will. You don't get that pink color, but you definitely get the blue. And, some of these really vibrant night shots of this pool, this really beautiful like house. And there's a lot of instances where he uses a crane shot. I'll get into that. That's probably my favorite scene in the entire film. And I just think that it's amazing looking film, and apparently he was inspired by Possession from 1981, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, starring Sam Neill and Isabella Adjani. I actually did an episode, the Video Nasties episode, discussing that one. He wanted it to look and feel a little bit like that film, where that film talks about the Berlin Wall and the ultimate divide between, the marriage, the couple that's separating. And this movie, he almost uses that same motif, but it's separating this author from himself. So I'm going to get a little bit into spoilers because this is impossible to talk about without spoilers. So if you haven't seen Tenebre, go see Tenebre, because I am going to spoil who the killer is. I think what's brilliant about this film is the motif between the writer, because he ends up being the killer, and himself, and his light side and his dark side. See, at first you get all these killings and it's this other person, and you're like, oh my gosh. And you learn that about halfway through the film, and you're like, oh well, now this killer's dead, so who's doing the killings now? You learn that this killer doing all this stuff and giving him all these negative vibes, it brings up a lot of repressed memories for our lead character, thus thwarting him to start killing people. And we get these incredible flashback shots of this woman, this beautiful woman on a beach, and she's wearing these bright red shoes. And you see a bunch of men like gazing over her, and you see that she's teasing them and whatnot. And then they all get to this kind of spot on the beach, and we see that she's toying with one of them, especially. And all the other men hold this guy down, and she sticks the heel of her, bright red heel in his mouth. And we never really get an answer as to, was this a repressed memory? Did this really happen? What part did this play in our lead character's life? We don't know. but it's the way it's done, man. It's so fucking atmospheric. You could just absolutely, you cut the atmosphere with a knife. It's just incredibly done. You have the whole, close-ups of her smiling and this and all these people and just, gazing over this woman. And then bam, she turns kind of heel on him, fetish, like, and then it's fucking crazy. Like, it's absolutely fucking bizarre. But I love how it's filmed because once again, he lulls you into that false sense of, oh, look at the pretty woman, and then bam, look who's on the ground now with the heel in his mouth. Very interesting way of shooting this, man. And I especially love the crane shot using this with the kill of the lesbian couple. Again, a gay theme in an Argento film, something that he likes to talk about a lot. Never goes too in depth with it, but I think it's interesting that it's always kind of there in the background, in the foreground, wherever. It's always somewhere in there in a lot of Argento films at this time. And you get this couple, they're arguing. One of them's upstairs, one of them's downstairs putting on a shirt. And you get this amazing crane shot where it goes from the base of the apartment to the top through a window, watching these two women, undress and talk and argue and basically talk about nothing. But once again, just like Deep Red, it builds that tension. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, what is going to happen here? Where is the killer going to arrive? And just as one of our women starts to put her shirt on, slash, you get this kind of crazy razor slash through this girl's the middle of her shirt, and you get this great visual of her face. She's like this, and it's used as one of the posters. And then bam, she gets killed. It's just a great visual. And then once we think, oh man, well, that was a great visual, we certainly can't top that. The other one gets killed, and you get this iconic image on the artwork here as she gets slashed, falls through a pane of glass, and we get this kind of blood trickle down her neck as Argento slowly but surely pans away. And it is just an absolutely wonderful way of shooting a great death scene, because we all remember the opening kill, the double murder in Suspiria with the breaking of the pane of the glass. And this is that, but very much more dialed down. And I think in a lot of ways, while it's more beautiful in Suspiria, it's more scary here. I think it's way more scary. Like, it's just fucking, you're like, oh my God, here was this couple arguing about whatever. And they just bang, bang, boom, get murdered within like 30 seconds of each other. There's really not a large gap or fight or anything. They are just absolutely just hacked and slashed off, and we move on. And it's just, again, the way that Argento said, hey, I want to use this crane shot to make this feel different. And apparently, I believe it took like 4 to 5 days to get that crane shot scene completely done correctly. And I think that's what makes this really work. He really was able to take his time and make sure that entire sequence worked as advertised. And that's why I really enjoy that particular death scene. I think it's the almost the highlight of the film. You also have one of my favorite batshit crazy finales where we learn that the writer's killing people. He wants to kill John Saxon and his lover because John Saxon's lover was actually our lead's girlfriend. And you get these two awesome murders. You get this murder of John Saxon where he's sitting out in broad daylight. And it's a beautiful day. There's kids around him, overpopulation. So once again, Argento, what he's setting up here is this guy's safe, right? You, me, everybody, we've all been in nice civilization where people are laughing like fuck, going out for a walk for the day, flying a fucking kite in the middle of population. Nothing bad can happen to John Saxon's character here, right? May he also rest in peace. He died recently too. You see him sitting on the park bench looking around, and all of a sudden he's standing and he's looking around and he gets stabbed. And what Argento does is, again, and which he would use later on in films like Sleepless, and he used in Deep Red with the kind of steady cam shot of everyone's shoes, all these people rushing up to him, and we see the bright red heels that we saw in all these repressed flashback memories walking away. So now you're telling the viewer that nobody's safe. This guy was killed in broad daylight, and all these people were around him, and nobody saw a fucking thing. And what we see as the viewer, we see what Argento wants us to see. Argento's just telling us, look at the shoes now. Pay attention, because I showed you that before. Here they are again. Now they're showing up again. Wow. I just think that's really, really smart, man. I really enjoy that whole kind of visual storytelling Argento does, and that full, sense of lullaby almost, that it just really, bam, just broad daylight, and then nobody's safe. Not even John Saxon in broad daylight, baby. It's amazing. Guy survived Nightmare on Elm Street. He survives Black Christmas. He does not survive Tenebre. I'm sorry to say, but we do love John Saxon. All right. And then the finale kill, which is, well, I guess one of the finale kills, you have John Saxon's lover sitting at the table with a gun, waiting. The kind of rain falling in the background. She's got a gun. She's looking around. All of a sudden, this fucking axe crashes through the glass. Wham! Off with her arm. And her arm, you see this whole thing where the blood just starts squirting out, and she almost paints the wall with it. Quentin Tarantino, fun fact, he actually said it's like one of his favorite murder scenes in any movie ever, just because of how beautiful and over the top gory it is. Because bam, arms goes slices off, and then just paints the wall and screaming, ah, ah. She gets killed, and it's fucking wild, man. I remember the first time I saw that. I expected it because it really, you're like, at this point, you've seen all these kills happen. You know this bitch is next. And just the way it's all done, the dark, stormy night, the glass breaking, and then that ultimate gory payoff. Beautiful, but once again, I think really effectively scary. And then you have this wild finale where the killer accidentally gets impaled, and the film kind of ends there. I just think this is a really, really interesting Giallo film. And I think that Argento does a lot of stuff once again to reinvent himself. I made this beautiful, gory, pretty death scene in Suspiria. Now I want to do this long tracking crane shot going throughout this house. And I like to use all these repressed memories and put them somewhere in here. So there's a little bit more to these murders. They're not just happening for the sake of it. There's a little bit more meat and potatoes there to go along with it. I think that's amazing. I missed a few comments here. Let's see. Trenchy's in the hazy. What's going on, good brother? How are you? Hope all is well. Trench chilling like a villain. You'll never believe it, but he worked with the same guy who worked. I did not fucking know that. He brought him back for Dracula 3D. Wow, it's crazy. Well, 2 masterpieces and an absolute fart. All right. I actually did not know that. Yeah, murder does. Murder brings us all together, brother. Dude, yeah, man. Giallos are awesome. I got a ton. I could give you a ton to watch. I saw one about a year ago that blew me away. Blood and Black Lace was incredible. I highly recommend that one. Everybody's saying hi to Trench. Good. I will say that, again, on closing on this one, I just love the fact that it really does kind of focus on the theme of the darkness within ourselves, and how this writer, when the movie starts, he is innocent. He's saying, I'm innocent. I'm just here to promote my book. He is saying all that stuff. But when all these horrible things, this stalker is around him, and he's being blamed for all these things, it can bring up repressed memories. And the book is called The Darkness, but at the end of the day, the darkness is truly within him, and it comes out in the second half of this film. And I thought that was just a really brilliant way to do it, again, because right off the bat you want to go, okay, it's what would it be if it was actually our lead character that's the killer? Okay, bam, halfway through the film, oh, it was this other guy. Oh, so it can't be him. Oh, well, the killer's wearing bright red heels. It can't be him. It's him. I think it was just really kind of clever how Argento tries to kind of lead you down certain paths until ultimately coming full circle with the path that he had always had envisioned from the start. I think that's really, really cool. And that's why I kind of love Tenebre. Again, I really like the score in this one. I don't think it's fully Goblin score. I think that this is three of the it was 3 of the 4 members, Claudio Simonetti, Fabio Pignatelli, and Massimo Morante. You had 3 of the 4. So it's close enough, but I like the score. It's like almost techno-y, jazzy, disco-y in parts. Like it's boom, It's more upbeat, up tempo, and I like that because I think this is a more upbeat, up tempo version of some of his other Giallo films. Like where some people will say, "Oh, Deep Red can be boring when you watch a 2 hour cut." This movie's not boring at all. I think that's the beauty of this movie. It's a little bit shorter. It's a little bit more to the point. And if you're looking for that more often so than a slow burn where a movie that can establish itself, its characters, its themes, and more stuff like that, this movie is able to do that, but it's a little bit quicker pace. So I do love Tenebre as well. I'm going to come in with a solid 10 out of 10 for this one. I absolutely love Tenebre. One of my favorite Giallo films of all time. Just a really, really good one and super underrated in my opinion. A lot of people talk about this one, including me for the longest time. It took me a long time to get to Tenebre, but I'm glad I did because it's definitely a top 10 video nasty for me and definitely a top 5 Dario Argento film. Absolutely love Tenebre, aka The Darkness. Awesome film. Ryan Snyder's in the Heezy. What's going on, good brother? Hope all is well with you, man. Almost Friday, right? Can't wait to get to the weekend. But that brings us to our final film of the evening. And man, every time I rewatch this movie, it reminds me so much as to why I love it. And it's a movie that I've watched to death, but I fucking love this movie. It's one of my all-time favorites. It is from 1985. It is Dario Argento's Phenomena. Phenomena. Absolutely freaking love Phenomena too. An epic film and a film that I think is interesting when you look at it on paper, right? Because he had made his return to form Giallo with Deep Red. Then he ventured into the two witch films with Suspiria and Inferno. Then everybody after Inferno said, "Hey man, we want to see you go back to what you do best, and that's Giallo films." And he said, "All right, I'll do it." Went back to Tenebre. Tenebre was a big hit. And this movie is almost like the product of the in between, right? So we have themes of a Giallo in there. We have themes of the witch film in there. It's almost as if those four films came together and the baby that they had is Dario Argento's Phenomena because there's something so magical and adventurous about this film. Because at the time, and weirdly enough, the same actresses in both movies, the movie Labyrinth came out, I believe, the year after this. And those two movies to me, this and Labyrinth, they work so good together because there's something magical about them. There's something magical about the adventure that we go on in both of these films, and none other than the same actress is in both is Miss Jennifer Connelly, who is just absolutely gorgeous. Even at this time, I mean, Jennifer Connelly to this day is just one of those beautiful women of all time, especially the early '90s, like Jennifer Connelly in Career Opportunities. That's like one of the most all-time beautiful women in any movie performances. It's incredible. She's absolutely fucking 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10 at that time. She was the hottest woman on planet Earth in the early 90s. And she's the lead in this. You also have Donald Pleasance, who of course is horror movie royalty, and they have some great scenes together. I can read a little plot synopsis and get into this one. A young girl with amazing ability to communicate with insects is transferred to an executive Swiss boarding school. Why her unusual capability might help solve a string of brutal murders. Yes, Phenomena. Oh man, I freaking love this movie. All right. Like every time I watch it, I'm just like, damn, like this is a fucking masterpiece too. And it's super underrated. I know a lot of people that will say, and I've watched a lot of reviews of this one lately. A lot of people don't think this is a good film. A lot of people think that this is a little too silly for Argento, a little too out there for Argento. I fucking totally disagree. And I know that Argento himself considers this to be his best work. It's his favorite movie of all the movies that he's made. And a lot of people would think, oh, wouldn't it have to be Suspiria or Deep Red? No, this is Argento's favorite. I believe also, I don't know if he's still in the chat, I believe this is Aiden's favorite Argento film. And I could see why. This is definitely in my top three. This is right up there with Suspiria Deep Red for me. This is the number 3 Argento film. But I think again, why I love it is just the magic. It's such a magical film. Um, you get that opening kind of slow, somber score, and you get Fiore Argento, Argento's other daughter. Everybody always talks about Aja, but Fiore Argento is the opening kill scene in this movie. And again, it kind of starts, and it's almost a mix between the Giallo films and the witch films that he had made. you get this opening kill where she's standing and she missed her bus, Fiore Argento, and she's looking around, and it's like a dark, overcast afternoon. She's walking along the road because she's missed her bus. She's like, shit, what am I going to do? And she stumbles upon this house. And again, the score is very somber at this time. And we're loaded into this house, and basically she encounters this crazy killer that chases her down. Again, pane of glass kill, smashes her head through a pane of glass, decapitates her, and her whole body and head fall into the river. And bam, we're underway with this movie. Crazy, another crazy opening kill. And once again, while I said Suspiria's was so beautiful and Deep Red's in a lot of ways was so beautiful, Tenebre's was more scary. This, I think, is the scariest opening kill of almost any Argento film. It's fucking really raw, and it really sets a tone. And I like that this film, though, it has a really nice sense of wonder to it. And I like that Jennifer Connelly is the lead, and she's like a 15-year-old girl. I like that the protagonist isn't just your basic reporter or writer or musician. It's this girl going to school, and her father has sent her here. He's like a big famous actor, and she's not fitting in very well at the school. And by night she's sleepwalking a little bit. She may not have witnessed a murder, and all these people slowly but surely are picked off. And I just love this movie, man. I think that Jennifer Connelly's performance is really what carries me through it. And I love her scenes with Donald Pleasance. I thought they had a wonderful chemistry with each other, where he's this guy that studies insects, and they're talking to each other, and he's like, you like insects, huh? And she goes, oh, I love them. They're my favorite. And he goes, a lot of people say insects are gross or creepy crawlies. Oh, of course, the alternate American title was called Creepers in the United States. But I like that Donald Pleasance is like astounded that she's into insects, and she's really into it. They talk about this little beetle at one point, and he's like, that beetle's in love with you. That beetle's trying to mate with you right now. And she's like, is it really? And he's like, yeah, that's what's going on. And I'm just like, holy shit, like we're going there, And I thought that was really funny kind of thing to put in this movie. There are some fun moments. There are some moments where all the girls are in class, and they're talking about this writer, Richard something, and one of the girls is like, oh, fuck this, Richard this, Richard that. And she gets up and she just goes, Richard Gere. And all the girl starts clapping and chanting and laughing. And I love that scene. I think that's a really funny scene of humor. There's this one scene where they're like, oh, can somebody tell me what's wrong with this music? And this girl who's wearing such an 80s, it's a Bee Gees shirt, she stands up and she goes, because it's not sung by the Bee Gees. Like everybody just starts laughing again. I don't know why, but that always made me laugh, man. I really like that scene. Some of the humor in this film I think really works, and I think it works in being much more of like an adventurous horror film, right? So you get scenes of murder and stuff, which you get in other Argento films, but you have scenes where Jennifer Connelly, she finds this bug that can maybe lead her to the house where she could find more clues. And she has it in this little box, and she's on this bus, kind of trying to get a sense of direction from the bug. Really interesting, different, original. There's not another movie like Phenomena. It's really its own thing. And I think that some of the music choices in this are really, really awesome. Of course, you had Flash of the Blade by Iron Maiden, which is excellent. It's used in a lot of the murder scenes and a lot of the chase scenes. I love that score. I think that's really awesome. I really like, there's, of course, may he rest in peace, Motorhead. There's some Motorhead music in there. And I like that that's added in with the somber kind of score, because when shit intensifies, bam, play the heavy metal. I like that. Any heavy metal fan will love some of the music used in this movie, because Maiden, Lemmy, all the best heavy metal stuff at that time is used in this film. And I think it's used pretty effectively. I noticed that there's a lot of differences between all these cuts. I've actually watched all three cuts of this movie now. Creepers is 83 minutes, whereas the uncut version is 116 minutes. That's crazy. The US cut out so much of this film where it's like it's almost like a different film. There's also an international version that's 110 minutes long. I didn't notice much difference in that cut. maybe a few scenes here and there. Believe it or not, which I thought was funny, they cut out a little bit of Daria Nicolodi, which I thought was preposterous because she's one of the best things about this movie. But I recommend watching the full 116-minute version. The 83-minute version is absolute disgrace to me. They cut out like all of the character moments. It's just completely like a movie where they cut all the fucking fat out to the point where the movie's almost ruined because there's no taste or life left. You just cut it all out basically. Um, but yeah, I love the pace of this one. I think this one has an excellent pace. It never gets boring. It has beautiful visuals. I love there's a scene where Jennifer Connelly is standing in the door and all the girls are making fun of her. Oh, you like bugs, you're a weird girl, all this stuff. And she kind of is able to communicate through all of this hate and anger going on around her. She communicates with insects from the outside. And all of a sudden you see all like millions of like flies and fleas and stuff outside the window, as almost like she's calling them for their help with all this bullying that's going on. And it's an amazing visual, which funny enough was Argento. He took a picture of that same building and did coffee grinds and like kind of sprinkled them all over. You would fucking never know that if I didn't tell you. But if you watch the scene, that's what he did. It's not actually CGI. Of course, there was no CGI at this time. It's not real insects. You're like, how the hell did he do that? Real picture, coffee grinds. Just absolute fucking awesome direction there and creativity because you'd never know the difference. And I thought that was a really, really cool way to kind of make it like seem grander, even though you didn't have the money, obviously. I don't think anybody could have made that happen at that time. That's a crazy effect to pull off, but Argento does it in this film. And you get a lot of clues along the way as to who may be the killer. And this one, I'm getting the spoilers now. You learn that it's Daria Nicolodi and her son. So Daria Nicolodi shows up in Deep Red as one of the main protagonists. She shows up in Tenebre at a bit role. She's there at the end. She's a survivor. Not the biggest role for her in that film, but in this movie, now she's playing the role of antagonist. She comes across Jennifer Connelly, who's absolutely had it up to here because of all the murders and stuff. And she goes, "Oh, come back with me. Come back to my house for the night. And in the morning, we'll fly out to your father. We'll get you out of here. I know you're miserable." So she fucking has her come over to the house and she basically tries to drug her. And she's successful in doing so. This random inspector shows up. He gets chained up. And you get this batshit crazy performance from Dario Nicolodi as the killer, just cutting fucking crazy ass promos, man. Saying, I have to cover up the mirrors because my son is so ugly and all this stuff. And we're like, man, what the hell is she talking about? Because you don't really get any exposition on the son character other than he's really ugly. He's really ugly. She has all the mirrors in the house covered up and stuff. And she's like, "Oh, my son, he's a really ugly kid," and she's just over the top as fuck with it, and she's yelling at Jennifer Connelly, "Take these fucking pills." And again, they lull you into, this is a nice woman. Oh, I'm gonna take care of you. We'll fly out to your dad in the morning. All is fucking well, until she kind of just bam turns on the bitch meter, and all of a sudden she's just this crazy lunatic lady, and Jennifer Connelly gets drugged, and she's like, "Oh my gosh," bashed over the head. And there's this whole incredible finale where Jennifer Connelly, she falls into this like crazy pit of goo as Daria Nicolodi is laughing at her. She's like, "Oh, you need help getting out of there?" Totally taunting her. And she has this kind of detective chained up and he's trying to reach at her, but he's chained up through his arms. And he goes to the extreme length of breaking his own thumb to pull it out of the slot and then put Daria Nicolodi in like a chokehold. It's just fucking brutal, man, because while you have all this gross, all this disgustingness going on with Jennifer Connelly, you have this guy that's actually breaking his own thumb just to get his hands on the antagonist, the killer. And she, while all this stuff's going on, escapes the kind of like pool of muck. And she's running out of the house and she sees in the corner of one of the rooms Daria Nicolodi's son. And she says to herself, I've got to help, right? We always feel bad for the poor child and all this stuff. And she walks in the room. It's okay now. It's okay. The fucking kid turns around and he's like all fucking deformed. He looks like a little fucking like demented Jawa thing. And fucking Jennifer Connelly does not waste any time. She does not miss a beat. She sees one look of this creepy motherfucker and goes screams and runs out of the room. And every time without fail, I fucking laugh. I think it's such a funny scene. She's like, "Oh, come here. It's okay. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy." And Argento puts in these little like child crying noises. you know, Kid turns around, and you're just fucking. It's one of the best moments in any Argento film where you just fucking throw your popcorn in the air. You're like, oh shit, like, and then this thing chases her, and there's this whole battle between them where Jennifer Connelly's trying to escape on the boat, similar vein to Friday the 13th Part 6 at the end, where CJ Graham is going after Tom Matthews on the boat, and this ring of fires around them. That happens in this movie, which actually was before Friday the 13th Part 6, so go figure. She's about to get killed by this thing, and all of a sudden she conjures up these flies and all these insects to come down, and they eat this fucking kid alive. Fucking wild, man. I remember when I first, I'm like, wow, like this is fucking insane. She kind of swims to shore, and it looks like the cavalry has arrived. One of the father's agents took a flight in to go see how she was doing, and she sees him. It's this like, little fat man, and he's like, "Oh," and he puts out his arms like, "Jennifer," and she's like, "Oh, hey," and he's like high ground, she's low ground. They're coming slowly but surely together to embrace and a hug. It's all over. It's all over with. Daria Nicoldi comes out of fucking bumblefuck nowhere with a piece of fucking like sheet metal and decapitates this fucking guy, this fat fuck running. Oh, Jennifer, off with his head. Fucking, every fucking time it's another one without missing a beat. I crack up laughing. And Daria Nicolodi's like, "You fucking motherfucker." She starts cutting a promo. And she's going after Jennifer Connelly now. She gets her down. She starts, unveiling her final words and "you bitch" and "you this, you that. That was my son." And all of a sudden, this fucking rabid chimpanzee shows up, who was in the film earlier. I will say that it's like Donald Pleasance's pet, and it's really friendly with him and her. This fucking rabid chimpanzee shows up with a switchblade and fucking carves the shit out of Daria Nicolodi's face, and they show it all. I do notice it was cut out of the US theatrical and a lot out of the international version, so that scene is uncut only in this 116-minute version, so I would definitely watch that because it's a brutal kill. He's like switchblading her in the lips and the mouth and all this stuff. Crazy gory. And it's just fucking wild because it's one of those finales where once it starts going, it just hits exclamation after exclamation. The goo, the gore, breaking your own hand to go at the killer. Then, "Oh, come here, little kid," and the kid turns around, fucking monster, crazy battle in the water, fucking sheet metal decapitation, and it's switchblade chimpanzee. Argento fucking went for it for this movie, and I know a lot of people will say it's too silly, it's too over the top, it's too tongue in cheek, whatever you want to say. I think it fucking works perfectly. I love the finale of this movie because he fucking went for it. There's not much taste in the finale. It's all done kind of in bad taste, but I think that's really why it works. It's so knowing what it is. It's so in on the joke with you that it really is why it works. And I think it's a wonderfully done finale. It's fucking exclamation after exclamation. It's fucking wild. And there's also some great kills along the way. I mean, Donald Pleasance gives a great performance in this. He's not in too much, maybe 3 or 4 scenes, but it's nice that he has this pet chimpanzee and it almost kills in honor of him. Like it's almost like a vengeance kill. Like, you killed, my best friend. Now I'm killing you with a switchblade at the end. Crazy, fucking mind blowing shit. But I don't know. I always really loved that this film really goes for it. And I could see why Argento would say it's his favorite film because, in a lot of ways, like I was saying before, up to this point, he was really defined as the Giallo guy. And he made this masterpiece of a witch film, and then people were like, "Well, we want you to get back to doing the things that you're best at doing." And this movie is almost like a middle finger to all of that. It's saying that I could do it all. I can have that theme of horror fantasy and I can add in the elements of Giallo and a witch film and that horror fantasy, and all these three things come together to make the phenomenon that is Phenomena. And you get great performances. I said great musics. It's absolutely a fucking grandiose movie. I love Phenomena. I think it's one of the most underrated 80s horror films and most underrated Argento films at that. I know it gets a lot of shit from some people for being a little too silly, a little too over the top. But man, to be perfectly honest with you, I think this is another masterpiece. I really do. Synapse once again came back to the transfer for this. It looks incredible, absolutely incredible looking transfer. Um, Possibly the best this movie will ever look. It doesn't say if it's a 2K or a 4K scan. I'm not sure. So there's some fun behind the scenes stories with this. Jennifer Connelly actually, within working with the chimpanzee, had half of her finger bitten off during filming, and they had to rush her to the hospital to get her fucking finger reattached. That happened to Jennifer Connelly, who at a time was an A-list actress in Hollywood. Isn't that just crazy? Like, I've never really heard her discuss it, this film, but I would love to know what her thoughts are years and years later. I mean, maybe that's a pretty traumatic thing to bring up. Like, can you tell us a little bit at the time that chimpanzee bit off your finger? Well, like, how do you really bring that up to somebody without kind of offending them? But I just thought that was absolutely wild, man. But from what I've heard elsewise, it was a smooth shoot, and there's some great behind the scenes photos that's on this Blu-ray, and that's you can find on the internet somewhere. Where Argento, he just looked like he was having a really, really great time filming this movie, and I think what really captivates me is that this is his favorite, like, and we could think of all the other directors out there. Like Romero's favorite film he ever did was Martin. We all remember Creepshow. We all remember Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead. We all remember these movies, but at the end of the day, his favorite was the one that, and I love Martin, but it's a movie that not a lot of people talk about. And it's the same thing here, where we all remember Suspiria. We all remember Deep Red. We all remember these movies, but Phenomena is the one that really stands out as his personal favorite. And I see a lot of that in this movie. This is a very personal film for him because he really just went for it. Let's have some badass music. Let's have elements that I've used, all the things I've used and learned along the way, and put them all in one movie. And I think that's why Phenomena really works. It's him saying, I've learned all these things. Now let me try to put them all together. And a lot of people will say, hey, that was a mess. He swung and missed. I will say he hit it out of the fucking park. I love Phenomena. The third and final 10 out of 10 on this fucking show. Yes, in my humble opinion, all three of these movies are perfect. I don't have any real problems with hardly any of them. I mean, I guess some would tell you the pacing in this one it could be boring. I disagree, and I think that's the reason this film works, is because it takes its time and because it really establishes everything it's trying to go out for. So I think this movie needs to be 2 hours. I really do. This movie, I think it's just a great return to form and a great middle finger to all the people that said, hey, Giallo films are tough to reinvent. He went out there and did it and used all these wonderful, beautiful shots. And I think Tenebre is just a great movie and great storytelling when it comes to us versus the darkness inside ourselves, and us versus stalkers, and us versus our repressed memories from yesteryear. I think that's just really, it's a deep film. It's really a lot deeper than people give it credit for. And then this, which is just completely the wild card, I think, in his filmography, is Phenomena. I think it's just such an interesting, different film for him to attempt and tackle. And I think he did a wonderful job with it. I know there are some that will disagree, but in my humble opinion, when it comes to great Argento films, Phenomena is in the top three. I would say these are number 2 and 3 respectively. And then I would say Opera would be number 4. Then this would be number 5, and then Suspiria would be number 1. So that would be like my top 5 Argento films. And yes, I know people will be asking, what would be number 6? It would be The Mother of Tears, just because I love that movie. But yeah, so that was my little director spotlight retrospective, if you will. This was a lot of fun for me. I do enjoy Dario Argento's work, and I feel bad that it took over a year to get back to Argento, but I hopefully sooner rather than later I can come back and return to talk more Argento again, because he was one of those filmmakers that I just adore. He's one of my favorites of all time. It's him and Romero, I think, that are my favorite too. There are some days where I'll think Argento and be like, man, he's the best that ever did it. And there's some days where I'll think Romero. So it's right up there. It's those two, man. They're my favorite two filmmakers of all time. And I always thought it was cool that they were really good friends. But yeah, man, this was really fun to go back, revisit all these movies in high def. They all look fantastic. Highly recommend all these Blu-rays. The two from Synapse, of course, and the one from Arrow. I think they're great stuff, great transfers. And never a dull moment talking about Dario Argento films. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining. Trenchy, Gore, AJ, Ryan, Aiden, all of you. Ty Junebug Films was here earlier. Chilling Like a Villain. My man Ben Grimm was here, and I just want to say I thank y'all for appreciate y'all watching tonight. This was a fun ass episode for me to do, and it's always fun prepping for Argento stuff. I have some interesting things planned for the channel down the road. I have I want to have Neon Black Reviews on soon. I talked to him about what topic we want to talk about, and I also had an interesting idea to do for Christmas. My uncle got me these really bad horror movies from Five Below. Like he got all like generic fucking horror movies, and they're all movies that I've not seen or heard of or anything. Like one's called Candyland, one's called like The House of Sounds or something. Really generic Lake Fear, really generic horror movies. I figured it would be fun to do almost like a horror movie survivor episode where I watch all these really bad horror movies before the show, and then I'll maybe rank them in how good they are from best to worst, I guess, or from worst to best. I think that would be a fun idea for a show. It'd be good for some laughs and good for me to see some new stuff. So I'm going to probably do that somewhere down the road. I don't know if that will be next week's show. I've been thinking of doing a Stephen King episode too, because there's been a bunch of Stephen King stuff that I would like to get to. So I will definitely be getting to Stephen King stuff maybe next week. And from there, we'll go from there. So once again, thank you all. Corey, thank you so much. Charles to you, man. I have some dew here. I'm going to pour the rest of it in just a little bit. But Charles to you all. Thank you all for joining. Long live Dario Argento. He's the man. Oh, Arthur popped in right at the end. Arthur, what's going on, good brother? Hope all is well. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. But yeah, so we're going to call it a night here. Thank you all for hopping in. Long live Dario Argento. And this episode, once again, is dedicated to the memory of Miss Daria Nicoldi. May she rest in peace. I will be putting that in the comments. May she rest in peace. So thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Long live the master of the macabre, Dario Argento, and all three of these fucking kick-ass movies. We'll catch y'all next time, only on Grande's Graveyard. Too sweet.